You're probably wondering why we're playing Ace Combat 7 next. Well, I could explain all the sort of details about that. So I will. But first, we're playing Ace Combat 7 next. Let's talk about Ace Combat 0 first. I was looking at all the games, like I mentioned during the previous little wrap-up video, which I still don't have a title for these, that, the announcement videos, where I was like, game, right, that whole thing. Points if you actually know what I'm talking about. Like I said, it's not always 1, 2, 3. Sometimes there's a bit of a curvature there. And I've been exposed to a lot of franchises that I've never really gotten to experience until the show, by virtue of the show. And one of those was Halo. And Halo absolutely followed that path for me, because there was Halo 1, which was basic, but good, right? Had a couple of mistakes, had a few issues, but it was solid. And there were some dips. I'm not going to name names, you know who you are. But I remember when it finally found itself, which was with Reach. I loved Reach. Reach just clicked with me, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I've actually had fun replaying it. I've, in fact, dragged some of my friends into playing co-op with me, because Reach is awesome. Well, Halo is awesome, but you get the point. I feel like Ace Combat 0 is the Halo Reach of the franchise so far. And admittedly, while there's plenty of other games in it that I'll probably never play, including Air Combat, and then Ace Combat 2, and then Ace Combat 3, and then, oh god, what's the full list? Hang on, I actually had a full list here. Let's do this. Because I had a whole list here. Here we go. So then there's Ace Combat Advanced, and then there's Ace Combat Skies of Deception, and there's Ace Combat Fires of Liberation. There's Ace Combat Skies of Incursion, and then there's Joint Assault, and there's Assault Horizon, and then there's Northern Wings, then there's Infinity. And I'm not playing any of those. But of the ones I've played, which is 4, 5, 0, 7, 0 feels like the Halo Reach of the franchise. In fact, to continue the parallels, Ace Combat 7 feels like the Halo 4 of the franchise, and you can take that however you want to. But I digress. 0 nailed it for me in several ways. The controls were awesome. The gunplay was awesome. The mission design was awesome. Relatively short. Almost got through the entire game without using save states to emulate mid-mission checkpoints. I fumbled at the finish line, as I often do, like the worthless nobody that I am. Because I could not manage the dam mission without using a save state once you reach the dam. And I couldn't manage the final mission because it was pissing me off. The duel, the joust. I wasn't a fan of either of those. I also wasn't a fan of the outro. The overall story of the game was decent right up until the outro, and then I was just like, ah. And I've been thinking about that a little bit. And I think if I was to give a theory as to why I think they fumbled at the end, it's because they kind of wanted to do a semi-typical Ace Combat story, and also wanted to do this kind of down-to-earth, more believable, more grounded war story. And so the war story is what they started with. And then they're like, oh, right. So there's this conspiracy, right? There's a conspiracy, you see. And they're here, and it doesn't work for me in the same way. I understand that it's part of the franchise, but my point is that I feel like if they had spent as much time and effort on the conspiracy arc, the typical Ace Combat story arc, as they had on the military campaign arc, it might have actually worked. But I don't think it does. My opinion. Also, I didn't like Pixie as a character. And now that I got those bombshells out of the way, because I wanted to get those bombshells out of the way and make sure that every Ace Combat fan hates me, because apparently everyone loves that final mission and Pixie. Joking and self-deprecation aside, does anyone mind sharing why they like him? Or why they like that last mission? I'd love to hear it. I like to hear other people's perspectives and opinions, and as long as you don't do it as a screeching chorus. But I mentioned what's going on with Ace Combat 7. So in the off chance anybody isn't familiar with this, there's something called the Oblivion line. And I'm describing this. I know some of you are like, I know what the Oblivion line is, lore. I actually got someone on camera just a couple of days ago who didn't know what the Oblivion line was. And so, granted, there was kind of an asterisk there, but just to be fully communicative here. When we started doing reviews, which was with Dragon Age Inquisition 9 years ago, or 10 years ago, actually, excuse me, it was a completely different system. And then we switched to a different system, and then we switched to a different system, and I lost track somewhere along the lines. But overall, because it was something we were building on the fly, because it was something we were learning through experience in how to design the current review system that I am extraordinarily proud of, all those previous reviews don't count. Because they were all being tracked under different auspices, with different eyes for different categories of different things in different directions. The analogy I like to use is it was like we were using liters and now we're using inches. Completely untenable. There's just no way to just translate from one to the next. So when we finally started the final iteration of the review system, which was with Oblivion, everything before it, gone. Now, hence the Oblivion line. It's really funny that by total coincidence that was the first game we did with that. Because now it sounds cool, right? The Oblivion line. Imagine if it was like the Secret of Mana line or something like that. Anyways, moving on. So all those previous reviews don't count, including Ace Combat 7. Having said that, I remember moderately liking the game the last time we went through. It pissed me off several times, but I still remember enjoying the overall experience. And since we're here, why not, right? Because these are the only Ace Combats I'm ever playing. 0, 5, or excuse me, 4, 5, 0, and 7 is pretty much going to be the whole franchise for me. So, why not complete the set? So I asked people while we were going through 5, would you like me to go ahead and add 7 to the list and make this happen? A few $100 later, and the interest of about 30, I think, people later, the game was funded. I would say in record time, but I'm not a good liar. It was actually funded in about 4 hours, though, which makes it the third fastest funded game we've ever funded. So that's why we're covering Ace Combat 7 pretty much as soon as I cut this off. Anyways. Normally I like to end on some kind of a non sequitur. So I'm going to. I've been looking at... I've been designing my own rule set. Actually, it's my fifth rule set behind the scenes for pen and paper stuff. It's kind of an iteration of the Magasean rule set. It's a kind of a new thing. And one of the things I've been looking at into it is I've been debating the concept of allowing the players to decide if they want to hyper-specialize and therefore iterate, or if I want to allow them to have builds as like an initial choice, like when you first make your character. And in lore, this would be kind of like, you know, sticking to a specific career path, or just kind of going with the flow and being an adventurer, kind of more generic thing, right? So you could either be a really, really good, you know, a time mage, for example, or you could just kind of be an adventurer and make it go. And you decide that at character creation. I was curious if anybody had any feedback. Anybody wanted to give me any thoughts about that? Because we've talked a lot about the difference between hyper-specialization and build gameplay across video gaming, and I think it also applies to pen and paper in several ways. I was just curious if anybody wants to give any thoughts or comments, or tell me how much you hate me, or the fact that Pixie is the greatest character ever made. I'll see you guys.